what I would advise, and I think what all of the research in the field would advise, is focus on building the connection and the trust and the relationship with your child first. And you can do that in 3 to 5 minutes a day. And you don't even have to set the time aside. You can just have the intention to do it in everyday moments and activities, whether it's a moment where you're feeding your child or your child's getting dressed. If you just tell yourself for 2 minutes or 3 minutes, I'm actually going to just slow down, calm down, and connect with my child by noticing what they're doing first. The connection will increase, absolutely. And that's what's going to allow greater success and less conflict and less volatility. Hold up this particular book, written by someone who I really enjoy talking with and spending time with, and I what I'd like to do, if it's okay with you, is read some very specific excerpts from this book, so that we can really dig into nuts and bolts, what you went through in your own experience, what you learned, and what ultimately shifted your relationship with Daniel in such a way that you could have more connection with him and then have more success with things like discipline as a parent in your life with him. So I'm going to this particular chapter called Chapter 3, The Turning Point, which is where you begin to talk about some of these deeper changes that you had to go through in learning more about understanding Daniel and what he needed in order to be able to learn to connect more, be calmer. I'm just grabbing my my other earpiece here so I can hear you fully. Okay, so here's what you say. This is on page 80 of your book. The only way Daniel could be calmed down when in a state of unease or distress was for the people around him to be in a contrasting state, not only believing that the situation would turn out for the best, but also absolutely trusting that Daniel himself would be fine. That sounds like a pretty significant both realization and then moment that you had.
I guess one of the things we learned around that was, it's really easy to assume, even without thinking about it, that how I feel in myself and how I behave in a situation and the results of that situation are all different things. And that, what you just read out, that came from a realization that actually they're not different things. What I'm feeling, what I'm believing, what I'm expecting of my son has a direct effect on my son, even if I keep it private. If I'm believing he's not going to cooperate with me, for example, and I don't say that, and I sort of do all of the right things and follow all of the right steps, the energy of my expectation reaches him, along with the words and the actions that I do, and he responds to that expectation as much or maybe more than he does to the more obvious and visible actions.
Wow. So tell me if I'm getting it completely, but a big part of your almost what you begin to reconsider or shift in yourself was this belief that Daniel, I don't trust you. I don't trust in your capabilities. I
Yeah.
don't trust in your ability to calm yourself down or to manage yourself in this situation. That what you had to shift was literally that, not only that belief, but then the resulting almost kind of demeanor or energy that would come through your nervous system, your body, your facial, whatever it was, right? As you were communicating with Daniel, when you begin to believe more in, I I trust you. I think you can handle this. I think you can get through this. That's when really significant shifts started to happen in Daniel and in your
Yeah,
interactions with
yeah,
him.
we saw the change in him when we started behaving in the same way with a different with a different mindset, a different set of expectations from him, a different belief in what was possible for him and
Mm,
from him. He picked up on all of that without us
mm,
understanding. And for many people, logically, it doesn't make sense. How could
mm,
your private thoughts be accessible to a tiny child who doesn't understand anything about thoughts at
mm,
all?
mm,
And it comes across. I guess it's why, animals, you have pets, you have cats and dogs, they're sometimes attracted to certain people and not attracted to others because they feel something about that
mm,
person that they're attracted to. It might not
mm,
always be in the best interests of the animal, but as far as the animal's concerned, there's something in that person that's attractive to them. And
mm,
it's the same
mm,
with children. There's something in me that my son understands and recognizes what I am expecting of them. It's not the I'm not the first person in the world to say this. There are all sorts of studies about. I remember hearing about a study in a school where some outside consultants came in, and they spent a day with the children and divided them into three streams. And the teachers were told, they were all new teachers who didn't know these children. They came and they were going to start looking after these children. They were told that the children in the top stream, they had enormous potential. They could go really, really, really far. Um, the children in the middle stream, well, they have, they can achieve something, but it's going to be limited. And really, there's not much hope for the children in the bottom stream. And as the term progressed, the children, without exception, performed as per the assessment of the consultants. And the teachers were all thinking, well, these consultants are really good, aren't they? They really managed to um, uh, sort out, which were the good children and which weren't in terms of learning. Until it turned out that it was an experiment and the researchers hadn't done any assessment at all. They'd randomly assigned the children, and it was the expectation of the teachers that caused the difference in the outcomes for the children. So there's research into this. This is well established, and I just learned how it worked in the particular case of me and my son.
mm. Wow, that's so powerful, Guy. And I'd like to relate an experience, similar experience as a professional, because I see this, what you just illustrated, all the time. So a big part of my work when I'm sitting with, when I'm in a room, whether it's in a family's home or in a clinic, when I'm with parents who have just, whose young child has just received an autism diagnosis. Oftentimes parents are very stressed, feel very overwhelmed, and are trying really hard to get connection and interaction happening with their kids.
Mm-hmm.
And they've also sometimes had a lot of information from professionals about kind of pushing harder for interaction because of the fear that if I don't push, I'm not going to get right. I'm not going to, my child's not going to stay with me or interact with me. So a big part of what from my own learning, continuous learning, what I try to communicate to parents and then establish in the kind of environment that I try to establish in the room is I really try to help parents begin to trust in the relationship that they have with their children. I really will continuously remind parents that their child wants to connect with them very much, that their child wants to interact with them, wants to connect with them, loves them, wants to be close with them. But what their child needs is for everyone in the room, including me, to not only move very calmly and slowly, to just relax, right? But also to trust in the child's own ability to move towards the parent, right? To trust in it that a child has that ability to move towards a parent and invite a parent into an interaction with them. So as soon as I begin that process and we begin that process together and parents begin to slow down and calm down and not try so hard by asking questions or grabbing toys and trying to make something happen, when parents just calm down and slow down and begin to be more available and also just start naming what they see their child doing or what they see their child's attention going to, all of a sudden, and sometimes this happens very quickly, sometimes it takes a little bit more time, children start to move towards their parents. They start to look more towards their parents. They begin to again shift from I've got to get away from you because you're moving too quickly and this is too much to I can tell that you're with me and I want to connect with you. And it's an incredibly powerful thing to witness. And I believe that it's very consistent with what you're saying, that as soon as the parents begin to shift from panic, stress, I've got to make something happen with my child, to let me just relax, kind of just be with my child, pay attention to them, things can really, really open up.
Because when I'm in panic, my child feels the panic. My child understands that his daddy, the person he's looking to understand how the world works, is overwhelmed and in panic in this situation. However much I'm trying to control it and not show it, the child will pick it up. And the information that they take is, this is not a safe situation. And generally, if it happens a lot, generally situations aren't safe. And I'm in a dangerous world. That's the message that a child picks up when I'm in panic all the time. So it's crucial. And what you said also about pushing, people push for connection. It's a different thing, but yeah, it can be really, it can feel really invasive to the child. And it might be my wish as a father to connect with my child. He might be sort of doing something and ignoring me, and I really have this really positive wish to play with him or whatever, and I'm pushing for it. I'm sort of inviting him again and again, and I'm sort of asking him to come over. Hopefully I'm not sort of laying little guilt trips like, oh, don't you want to come and play with your daddy, don't you care about me, anything, hopefully I'm not saying things like that. But anything like that, it feels like the child's choice is taken away. So, there's so much pressure being put on them to interact that they might interact. They might do it but it's out of a sense of obligation. It's not out of a feeling that they really want to make that connection. And then they start to develop a feeling of heaviness or negativity around the idea of connection. And the whole I think this happens a lot with autistic children. The whole concept, the whole area of connection becomes something that's complicated, becomes something that's dangerous, becomes something that doesn't feel good because of these early experiences of being pressed for it. So,
Yes, 100% Guy. That's and so that those are exactly the patterns that I see beginning to get more entrenched when I have an opportunity to be with young children, typically 2 years old, 3 years old, and their parents. And as I said earlier, the well-intentioned system absolutely um, ignites and intensifies that pressure. Parents become more panicked, more desperate, and even parents report this to me all the time, where they will say, before we got the diagnosis and before we started getting more professional input on our child, we weren't as worried about it. We and our interactions actually, in many cases, went much better with our kids. But as soon as we started hearing, no, 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 don't relax. You gotta push, because development is starting, socially especially, is starting to get a bit more slowed, or so your child needs you to push, right? That's again, I see this as, that's my respect. That's on me as a professional. That's on the professional community, that we are fueling these kinds of, unintentionally, these kinds of breakdowns between some children. So especially in the U.S., because we have such a well-developed intervention system that gives parents these messages. Um, I feel tremendous responsibility to get in there as early and as quickly as possible to send parents this very different message, which is just like, let's all relax, and let's begin to remember that your child loves you, wants to be close to you, wants to interact with you, and all we have to do is show up. And all we have to do also is show up in ways that we're curious about our kids, where we're watching them and seeing what it is that they're interested in, that they're doing, that they're mm, playing with or interested in, and just letting them know, I see you, I'm with you, just by naming, ah, you're holding your car, right? You love the wheels on your car, whatever that might be. That's where the glue begins to get established between parents and children. And I think it's very consistent with what you just described, Guy, and all of those very important shifts that I believe we can help parents make.
So, we've talked a lot about the things you shouldn't do, but the things or the things that might not get the results that you want. But you're just talking now about, what we can do, which is really just as you say, just relax and be with the child without any sort of commentary about what the child's capable of, what I'm capable of as a parent. Just to sort of say, okay, just let's leave that. Let me just enjoy being with the child. Let me find out about the child. Let me accept the child on their own terms, and build a relationship with them as they are.
Absolutely. And what we do know from certainly lots of research around things like challenging behavior, aggression, behavior in young children, like, hitting, biting, right? How what sort of either fuels that, or what can help decrease that. The missing piece, the foundation of that, is always connection and positive relationship and interaction between parents and children. So, in other words, this goes back to something I said earlier. It's not as helpful to focus on what we're going to do in those really difficult moments. What's more helpful to focus on is building the connection and the relationship, because ultimately, if I'm trying to help my child do something, or to we could say perhaps lead or guide my child to do something that's really difficult or challenging for them, like get ready for school, or follow through with a certain request I've made of them, or give them an instruction, or an expectation, right? And I want them to cooperate with me. The crucial the crucial determinant in that is whether or not my child has a connection with me, right? If my child can feel the connection, if they can lean into the connection, right? And if the connection is, if there's a foundation of safety and trust that's been built up there, the cooperation then flows much more easily. So part of what I would say to parents that are asking this question, how do you get there? How do you, how do you establish this? It sounds great, but like, I'm not there with my child. It's incredibly tense and volatile. What I would advise, and I think what all of the research in the field would advise, is focus on building the connection and the trust and the relationship with your child first. And you can do that in 3 to 5 minutes a day. If you just set aside a tiny amount of time, and you don't even have to set the time aside, you can just have the intention to do it in everyday moments and activities, whether it's a moment where you're feeding your child or your child's getting dressed. If you just tell yourself for 2 minutes or 3 minutes, I'm actually going to just slow down, calm down, and connect with my child by noticing what they're doing first, right? The connection will increase, absolutely. And that's what's going to allow greater success and less conflict and less volatility. So start where you are with your child, but know that this is the work is not going to happen in the most tense moments. It's going to happen outside of those moments by building and strengthening your just everyday connection and contact with your child.